Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. For the part 10 of the series What If Karmic Gacha system in Modern Family World, there are two versions. One is just the text-to-speech, regular, version, and the other is with the songs, alternative, version. Now I need to know which version should I use going forwards. As such, just like for everything else, I would like your opinion on whether I should continue with regular version or the alternative version. I have created a poll for this, so please vote in it and let me know which version we should use going forward. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 106, Creating the Five Elements Barrier. Kurosaki Ichigo encounters a strong enemy. Most of these materials came from powerful souls from ancient times. In the past, Rokongai and Siriitii were much more dangerous than they are now. The reason they are so safe now is entirely due to the efforts of the first generation of the Gotei 13. The first generation captains were all full of martial virtues, all of them ruthless, and they killed many people. For example, the first generation Kenpachi, Unohana Retsu, would go to Rokongai to kill people for fun. Those terrifying villains were like weeds in a field in the hands of Unohana, who cut them down one after another. After the first generation captains killed a lot, those who had the ability to threaten Siriitii were basically eliminated. The Wolfman clan like Kamamura Sajin chose to sincerely hide from the world because they were afraid of being killed. After countless battles, Old Man Yamamoto gained a great reputation and scars. The Tsunoya Shiro family made a lot of money. It's a pity that they only know how to be misers and have no idea of the true value of these treasures. In the hands of Uehara Shiroa, 5 precious materials were glittering, their light flowing, changing, and mysterious. These 5 materials represented the 5 forces of gold, water, wood, fire, and earth. Combining the Mind Gem, Unlimited Blade Works, and the Shinigami Kido, he slowly integrated these 5 forces into one and evolved them to a higher level. This was inseparable from his insights and imagination from his previous life. Uehara Shiroa was ready to gather all his trump cards to create a unique set of barriers. Because the people in the Soul Society were too difficult to kill, the sealing barrier was a very important thing. The power of the sealing barrier was also very strong, and sometimes it could even play a decisive role. For example, in the defense of Karakura town, the flame barrier of Old Man Yama trapped the Aizen trio. The huge crystal of the Soul King Palace could even seal the body of the Soul King, thus creating the wedge of the 3 realms. Urahara Kisuke's barrier to seal Hogyoku Aizen and the Blood Oath seal to seal the 5 great royal guards Bankai were all very remarkable powers. During the 1,000-year blood war, even Ieyasu Nanao specifically developed a Kido barrier to seal Hashwolf. As a teacher, Uehara Shiroha naturally could not fall behind. With many trump cards, he successfully developed a powerful Kido barrier called 5 Elements Barrier. Although the current barrier was not perfect and there were still many areas that needed to be improved, he had high hopes for this set of 5 Elements Barrier. Because this set of barriers had infinite possibilities. At this time, Uehara Shiroa continued to perfect the 5 Elements Barrier in his hand, while releasing his observation haki to pay attention to the situation on Kurosaki Ichigo's side. To improve strength, you can't stop watching the show. Near the Senzakyu, Palace of Penitence, Ichigo Kurosaki, Ganju Shiba, and Hanataro Yamada were walking quickly forward. Suddenly, there was a subtle sound of bells and a deep, rough voice in the distance. Finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Before the 3 of them could react, something strange happened. Boom! A silent explosion broke the sky, and an unimaginably huge spiritual pressure swept over, like mountains and oceans, indestructible and endless. The air solidified instantly, and Ichigo and the others solidified with it. It's not that they didn't want to move, but that they couldn't move and dared not move. At this moment, each of them seemed to have a blade on their neck. Although they couldn't see the invisible blade, they could feel it clearly. In such a situation, of course they dared not move. This spiritual pressure. Ichigo Kurosaki didn't expect that the enemy this time would be so strong. However, his performance was considered good among the three. He just had difficulty breathing and was temporarily immobilized. Hanataro Yamada next to him was sweating profusely, breathing with difficulty, and looked like he was about to die. No wonder he performed so badly. Originally, Hanataro Yamada joined the 4th Division because of his weak fighting will and became a medical support staff member. The spiritual pressure sweeping in from afar was too terrifying. The powerful spiritual pressure that was fierce, bloodthirsty, extremely violent, and full of hostility was too strong for non-combatants. Ichigo Kurosaki and Ganju Shiba could barely stand it, not to mention Hanataro Yamada. Realizing the horror of this spiritual pressure, Ganju Shiba touched the sweat on his forehead and exclaimed, "It feels like being soaked in blood. How many people has this guy killed to have such spiritual pressure?" Ichigo, the person in front is not an ordinary person. Be careful. At this time, Ichigo Kurosaki, who was acting as the vanguard, released his spiritual pressure and stood firmly in front, protecting the two people behind him. The three continued to move forward with difficulty. Then the crisp sound of bells rang again, and a tall figure landed in front of them. The person with orange hair and the weapon looks the same as Ikaku said, "I found you." The voice of the person who came was low but hit the heart directly, as if it was a wail from bloody hell. Ichigo Kurosaki, the strongest of the three, did not hear the bell at all, nor did he notice when this person appeared. And with the appearance of this imposing figure like a hill, the three of them immediately felt like they were in a sea of blood and corpses, unable to move at all. The powerful spiritual pressure pierced through the bodies of the three people like a sharp blade. For a moment, the three of them envisioned the scene of themselves being disemboweled by a sharp blade. However, all this was an illusion. It was just because the spiritual pressure of the person who came was too terrifying that it caused mental disorder. Even so, Hanataro Yamada was unable to support himself. He tried desperately to say the name of the person in front of him. But the words could not come out at all when they came to his lips, because he was too scared and didn't even have the strength to speak. After struggling for a few moments, he still fell to the ground weakly. He had reached his limit a long time ago, and it was not easy to hold on until now. Seeing Hanataro Yamada fall to the ground, Ganju Shiba reacted quickly, dragging his heavy body to carry the other's thin body. "Run, don't stop." "Ichigo?" He took a few steps, but found that Kurosaki Ichigo was motionless. Ganju Shiba was puzzled. The newcomer was so powerful, should they fight to the end? They came to rescue people, not to fight. Anyway, Rukia was in the Senzaku ahead, wouldn't it be wiser to rescue her and run away? "Ganju, like I said before, you take Hanataro first, I'll hold him back." "Rukia is in your hands, please." Kurosaki Ichigo was on full alert, not even daring to turn around. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave, but that he couldn't. Because he was closest to this beast-like man, he knew that the other party had locked onto him with murderous intent. He had never thought that pure murderous intent could be so powerful, just as scary as a real sword. "I am Zaraki Kenpachi, the captain of the 11th Division. You are the one who defeated Madare Mikaku, right?" Zaraki Kenpachi held the sword in one hand, looking excited. "I've been looking for you for a long time, please don't let me down. Otherwise, I will chop you into pieces." He didn't even look at Ganju Shiba and Hanataro Yamada who were running away. Kusajishi Yachiru beside him also blinked her big eyes and looked at Kurosaki Ichigo cutely. "My name is Kusajishi Yachiru, and I'm the vice captain of the 11th Division. Nice to meet you." "It's you. Are you here to stop me too?" Looking at the fierce man with his hair standing up and a strange eye patch on his right eye, Ichigo Kurosaki also remembered Madare Mikako's warning. The other party said that their captain was the strongest and would come after him. Only then did he understand what the so-called strongest meant. He clenched Zangetsu in his hand and prepared to fight to the death. Zaraki Kenpachi said impatiently, "I see you don't understand at all. Don't make me repeat myself, I've already said that I'm here to fight you. Whether it's the two guys who just passed by or Rukia Kachiki, I don't care whether they live or die. I just want to hack you to death, or be hacked to death by you." As he spoke, his expression and face became more ferocious. He was very interested in Rukia Kuchiki's teacher, and wanted to have a good fight with him again. It's just a pity that he couldn't find a chance to fight with him. I hope this orange-haired boy can hold on for a while longer and not end too soon. In the treasure house of the Tsuneyoshiro family, Uehara Shiroa had already noticed the two people who were confronting each other. While playing with the 5 elements barrier that was constantly evolving and getting stronger, he thought with interest. Zaraki Kenpachi's spiritual pressure is slowly weakening. This guy is still the same, he will adjust his spiritual pressure adaptively according to the strength of his opponent. These two people are very different at first glance, but in fact, they are like looking in the mirror, they have a lot in common. Both of them were strong brick flying type players, true cleaver lovers, they could only hack and slash when encountering things. Kido, tactics, had nothing to do with them. Zaraki Kenpachi could do nothing but hack and slash, even his Shurikai he had not mastered it, and he even only held the sword with one hand. Ichigo Kurosaki was even more amazing. He could only use the horizontal slash and the advanced horizontal slash Getsuga Tensho. This guy was a quick learning version of the Shinigami. It could not be said that he was not good at the Zanpakuto, but he can only say that he did not understand it at all. Both of them were cheating players who appeared at the maximum level and then sealed themselves. But there was a difference between the maximum level and the maximum level. Zaraki Kenpachi's maximum level was only the maximum level in the category of Shinigami, while Ichigo Kurosaki's maximum level was the maximum level of the Pseudo-Spirit King level. Logically speaking, the battle between the two should be earth-shattering and the sky and the earth should collapse. However, these two powerhouse monsters chose to seal themselves. Zaraki Kenpachi chose to seal himself in order to better enjoy the fun of killing. Moreover, this guy would habitually adjust his spiritual pressure to the same strength as his opponent when fighting. Most of Ichigo Kurosaki's power was also in a self-limited state. His combat power was even more prominent as a willful and fluctuating one. When his mentality was good, he crushed the captain, and when his mentality was bad, it was difficult to beat a vice-captain. Zaraki Kenpachi chose to seal his strength because he was afraid that the enemy was too weak and the battle would end too quickly. Ichigo Kurosaki wanted to live a peaceful life and couldn't bear to kill others. So these two powerhouses started to duel with each other, and it even looked a bit like chicken fighting. In response, Uehara Shiroa could only sigh, what a pair of crouching dragon and phoenix. Uehara Shiroa's side was full of harvest and calm, but other places in the Soul Society were in an uproar. As the news of the Night of Extermination spread, the entire Soul Society was shaken. After hearing the news, not to mention the vice-captains, the chief officers and the nobles, even the well-informed captains of the Shinigami were stunned. The Tsuneyoshiro family, one of the 4 great noble families, was finished. This was too shocking. And it was destroyed by internal strife. This Tsuneyoshiro Tokunada was really a ruthless person. What's more shocking was that Uehara Shiroa, a civilian from Rokangai, actually took charge of everything in the Tsuneyoshiro family. It's like flipping the table and becoming the master. Overnight, he became half of their immediate superiors. From then on, who dared to speak loudly in this noble street except the Kuchiki clan? This was too incredible. In this regard, all the captains were willing to admit defeat. This guy was too much, who could compare to him? This was not over yet, there was news from the captain of the 4th Division, Uno Hanaretsu. After various methods were used, it was proven that the corpse hanging on the wall of the Great Spirit Library of the East was neither a fake corpse nor a disguise, but Aizen's real body. And he was dead. The Captain Commander Yamamoto Genryosei Shigakuni was particularly furious when he received the news. Overnight, one of the 4 great noble families was gone. The captain of the 5th Division of the Gotei 13 was also assassinated silently and hung on the wall for public display. This was a slap in his face. Too arrogant. Fortunately, with the support of Uehara Shiroa, who discovered the murderer of the genocide in time, the performance of the Gotei 13 finally did not hit rock bottom. The furious Yamamoto Genryosei Shigakuni almost personally killed the troublemaker. In the end, he suppressed his anger and, together with Captain Hitsugaya Toshiro, who came to report, issued a level 1 martial law. He ordered the captains to take action immediately and to resolve the Ryoka invasion incident in the shortest possible time and to find out who killed Aizen. Level 1 Martial Law is the highest level of Special War Order, which means that the Shinigami captains can release their Zanpakuto at any time, and even activate their Bankai in some core areas. Because Level 1 Martial Law involves too many things, even the Captain Commander Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni must work with another captain to issue this order. From this moment on, the entire Gotei 13 has completely entered a state of total war. Although he had not received the news of Aizen's death and the first level martial law order at this time, Kayaraka Shunsui was also ready to take action. He brought the third seat of the 8th Division, Injoji Tatsufusa, to intercept Yasutora Sato, one of the Ryoka. It's not that he didn't want to bring Ayase Nanao with him, but his vice-captain is grown up and can't be controlled by him anymore. A long time ago, Ayase Nanao was just like Uehara Shiroa, who only had the title of the Gotei 13 and stayed with the Gotei 13 all day. At this time, Injoji Tatsufusa, who was burly and had 2 pigtails hanging down to his chest, scratched his head and said, "Captain, do you need to be so serious about a mere Ryoka?" He knew how unreliable his captain was. He usually avoided work as much as possible. Why was he so active this time? Moreover, although these Ryoka made a lot of noise, they only injured a few people and did not kill them. Therefore, the current situation is not too serious, and it is far from the time for Captain Kayaraka to take action. If the situation continues, our Gotei 13 will lose face, and Old Man Yama will definitely be unhappy. Kayaraka Shunsui, wearing a bamboo hat and a pink captain's haori, explained with a smile. In his heart, he was really happy. Because he already knew that Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada and the Tsunoyoshiro family were all exterminated. And his good brother Uehara Shiroa became the final winner. This was a triple blessing. If the situation allowed it, he would have wanted to go to the Flower Street and hold a banquet immediately, and celebrate with his good brother for 3 days. However, Kayaraka Shunsui had long realized that this Ryoka invasion was just a farce. Someone wanted to use this to stir up trouble. Before, he was worried that this was a conspiracy of Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada. But now, Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada is gone, so everything is easier. But just in case, he is still ready to solve the Ryoka invasion ahead of time. After listening to Kayaraka Shuinsui's words, Injoji Tatsufusa said confidently, "Captain, don't worry, I am the great swordsman Injoji Tatsufusa. If that Ryoka really shows up, my Hosen will teach him a lesson. Then I will wait for your good news." Kayaraka Shunsui smiled. He was not worried about the third seat of the 8th Division. It was not because Injoji Tatsufusa was so strong, but because he would run away if he couldn't beat the enemy. This big guy who looked fierce was better at clerical work. Usually he would throw some trivial paperwork to him. Although he was not as good as Ayase Nanao, he was also good enough to handle ordinary work. Anyway, Kayaraka Shunsui himself was determined, "I will never work in my life. Why should I finish my work?" Chapter 107, The Battle Between Two Hacks, First Level Martial Law. And if the work is really done, will they, the captains, be useless? Soon, as expected, Injoji Tatsufusa was easily knocked down by the Ryoka who rushed over. But the other party did not use excessive force. Kayaraka Shunsui, who was in a good mood, chatted with the other party for a while, and at the same time found out the purpose of this group of Ryoka invading the Soul Society. To be honest, it was quite outrageous. They, the Shinigami, her own people, the Soul Society, wanted to kill Rukia, but this group of humans came to save her. He was more and more certain that these Ryoka were being used by someone. This Ryoka incident was just a cover, and the mastermind had an ulterior motive. However, no matter how Kayaraka Shunsui tried to show his goodwill, the Ryoka in front of him refused to give up. After persuasion failed, he could only use a little bit of his skills to subdue the other party. Of course, Uehara Shiroha noticed the situation on Kayaraka Shuinsui's side. However, he didn't care too much. Brother Kayaraku was not only powerful, but also had a first-class brain. It was natural for him to deal with Yasutora Sato. Compared with the suspense-free battle over there, the battle between Ichigo Kurosaki and Zaraki Kenpachi was more exciting. He was very satisfied watching it. The maids beside him were also feeding grapes, pouring wine, and massaging. The appearance and temperament of these maids all started as oirons, and their prices were also very steep. However, thanks to the wealth of the Tsuneyushiro family, Uehara Shiroha now had a lot of money and couldn't spend it all. This amount of expenditure was just a drizzle for him now. When he had time, he wanted to have a beacon fire to play with the princes, plus a pool of wine and a forest of meat, and then hold a beauty pageant. Open the eyes of the Shinigami and nobles of the Soul Society and let them know what it means to be extravagant and licentious. At this time, Ichigo Kurosaki was struggling in his fight with Zaraki Kenpachi. The standard method of suppressing before praising. After slashing with all his strength, Ichigo Kurosaki was surprised to find that the opponent was not hurt at all. His own hand was cracked instead. He realized how big the gap between him and the captain was. He was sweating all over. His body was extremely stiff and his moves were full of openings. Because of his mentality, Ichigo Kurosaki was completely suppressed by Zaraki Kenpachi. This was under the premise that Zaraki Kenpachi was holding back. Just when Ichigo Kurosaki was at a loss, Kayaraka Shunsui had already defeated Yasutora Sato. As the golden pendant that he never left behind rolled to the ground, Yasutora Sato's spiritual pressure slowly disappeared. Ichigo Kurosaki was anxious when he noticed that his friend's spiritual pressure had become very weak. When he was anxious, he opened up. Ichigo Kurosaki remembered the warning of Zangetsu, forget fear and look forward. Retreat and hesitation lead to stagnation, and fear will inevitably lead to death. Suddenly, his waist and legs were no longer sore. He was full of energy and regained his confidence. Then, he was knocked down by Zaraki Kenpachi's sword, the sword was destroyed and he was critically injured, all in an instant. Is this the end? How boring. Looking at Ichigo Kurosaki lying on the ground bleeding, Zaraki Kenpachi shook his head and said, "You have already adapted to my spiritual pressure and can even cut me. But you arrogantly relaxed your spiritual pressure defense, what a pity. Ordinary opponents are still no match, they are too weak. I really want to have a good fight with that guy Uehara." On the brink of death, Ichigo Kurosaki looked at Zaraki Kenpachi's departing back with determination on his face. He still wanted to fight, he wanted to rescue his friends, he must not fall here. Then, the mysterious figure in Ichigo Kurosaki's inner world appeared. Time stopped at this moment. Zangetsu, wearing a black cloak and translucent sunglasses, walked slowly. The corners of the black cloak rustled, as if integrated with the shadow and blood. A mysterious power spread from him, tightly wrapping around Ichigo Kurosaki on the ground. Seeing this scene, Uehara Shiroha knew that the number one brother on the list could not sit still and came down personally. He continued to activate the ability of observation and perception, and saw the famous scene turning Sword Ichigo with his insight into everything. In the mental space, White turned Zangetsu into a windmill. Regardless of the power of this sword-turning technique, it looked really cool. It's a pity that Ichigo Kurosaki didn't master this move in the end. From the beginning to the end, his moves were always plain and unpretentious. Then, White and Zangetsu cooperated with each other and fooled the naive Ichigo Kurosaki. He firmly believed that it was through his own efforts that he got the recognition of Zangetsu and regained his strength. The fully revitalized Ichigo Kurosaki burst out with spiritual pressure far beyond his previous level. After being on the verge of death, he not only reformed his Zanpakuto, but his spiritual pressure also reached the captain level, even surpassing Zaraki Kenpachi. This speed of strength improvement was comparable to that of a scion. At this time, Zaraki Kenpachi was both surprised and excited. How did you survive? Why don't your wounds bleed? How did your spiritual pressure suddenly become so strong? There are so many questions to ask, but none of them are important. Now, I just want to fight with you. On the high wall, the little Kusajishi Yachira who saw the scene also smiled knowingly. Kenchan looks very happy. Apart from Pretty Boy, no one can make him so happy, it's great. In the following battle, Kurosaki Ichigo, whose strength had greatly increased, took advantage of everything and chopped Zaraki Kenpachi so hard that blood gushed out of his body. However, the opponent was not afraid at all and even became more and more courageous as the battle went on, and the blood seemed to flow endlessly. In the end, Zaraki Kenpachi tore off the special eye patch that sealed his spiritual pressure, and an extremely powerful golden spiritual pressure burst out. Facing such a monster, Kurosaki Ichigo could only use all his strength and declare, "I fought side by side with Zangetsu, and you fought alone. So I can't lose." Hearing this, Uehara Shiroa curled his lips. "Kurosaki-san, do you think is it a 2-on-1 fight for justice? How naive. I can only say that you underestimated your popularity." Kurosaki Ichigo and Zaraki Kenpachi had limited perception, so they didn't know how lively it was around them at the moment. Uehara Shiroa could see it clearly. He knew how outrageous the situation was at this moment. At first glance, the only bystander of this battle was the pink-haired little Yuichiro. Kurosaki Ichigo and Zaraki Kenpachi seemed to be just fighting one-on-one. But in fact, there were people all around. In the spiritual space, White and Zangetsu were watching intently, ready to act at any time. Hayasube Chibe, Yawach, Aizen, Urahara Kisuk, Shihoin Yoruchi, Unohana Retsu and others were also observing in secret, ready to move. Good grief! Uehara Shiroa could only say good grief. A captain of the Zero Division and the Emperor of the Quincy watch the live broadcast every day, don't they have to work? This Kurosaki Ichigo was more than a 2-on-1 fight, this was a group fight for justice. As the saying goes, a hero cannot stand against a large number of people, not to mention that Zaraki Kenpachi had been holding back. Normally, he would slowly and adaptively adjust his spiritual pressure to maintain a level comparable to that of his opponent. Who would have thought that this orange-haired boy had no sense of fair play and increased his spiritual pressure by several levels at once? Before Zaraki Kenpachi could increase his spiritual pressure, he suffered a heavy blow. After the two of them fought with all their strength, his mountain-like body slowly fell to the ground, and his blood stained the ground red. But Ichigo Kurosaki was not having an easy time either. Because he was seriously injured before, after defeating Zaraki Kenpachi, he also fell to the ground and lost consciousness. Strictly speaking, both sides suffered losses in the fight. Over there, Kusajishi Yuichiro came over with her flash step and bowed to thank the unconscious Ichigo Kurosaki. "Thank you for making Kenchan so happy. Ichi, try your best to survive. Come and play with Kenchan next time." After saying that, she helped Zaraki Kenpachi up and disappeared without a trace. After they left, Shihoin Yoruchi came and took Ichigo Kurosaki away. But this time, she was dressed conservatively. Don't look at Matsumoto Ranjaku, Shihoin Yoruchi, and Suifoam as if they're all independent women. In fact, they cared very much about Uehara Shiroa's opinion. After meeting Uehara Shiroa, they all became more modest in their appearance. Because they knew Uehara Shiroa's preferences, they unconsciously became the appearance that he liked. Uehara Shiroa was very satisfied with this. Several female Shinigami were indeed great women, with both interesting souls and beautiful appearances. But they didn't suffer any loss. After all, he was also a great man, even the best. While thinking, Uehara Shiroa turned his attention to the Senzakyu. At this time, Rukia was worried in thought. The spiritual pressure fluctuations of the two parties disappeared. The existence of the Sekiseki stone dispersed the spiritual pressure fluctuations, and I couldn't judge the specific situation at all. Could it be that someone died? Is someone like me really worth others sacrificing their lives to save? Teacher, please tell me. Because of the situation, she was forced to kill Shiba Kaien, who was corrupted by the hollow. This became her obsession. For this reason, she even brought Shiba Kaien's body to the Shiba family's residence alone and admitted that she killed Shiba Kaien. Rukia has never been able to forgive herself. She thought that it was because she did not do well enough that led to Shiba Kaien's death. What a stupid disciple. Uehara Shiroa saw at a glance that Rukia's condition was not right. She was a little obsessed. But it didn't matter, after this ordeal, she would be able to get back on track. He would make her think it through. At the same time, he also noticed that Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro, who had gone a step ahead, had arrived at the gate of the Senzakyu. Hanataro was worthy of being Hanataro. Not only did he carry the shock point potion that could stun people with low spiritual pressure, he also secretly took the spare key to the Senzakyu. Shiba Ganju didn't expect that the seemingly honest Yamada Hanataro had this trick, and praised him for doing a good job. At the same time, he was also very curious about what kind of beauty this Rukia Kachiki had that made several people risk their lives to save her. When he saw Rukia's face, he was shocked. It was not because she was too beautiful, but because he knew her. He would never forget this face, nor the night when his eldest brother died. The wounds on his eldest brother were sword wounds, definitely not caused by hollow. And the Shinigami in front of him once admitted to killing his eldest brother. Shiba Ganju grabbed the other's collar in anger and questioned her. Noticing the mark on Shiba Ganju's clothes, Rukia was surprised. That mark. Are you from the Shiba family? Are you here for revenge? Then, she resigned herself to her fate and said, I killed Shiba Kyan, and I have nothing to say if you come here for revenge. Yamada Hanataro tried his best to stop him. Then, Kochiki Byakuya, who had been paying attention to the situation here, appeared. Shiba Ganju fought with him bravely, trying to buy time for Rukia and Yamada Hanataro to escape. Uehara Shiroa shook his head when he saw this scene. The plot slowly changed from a hot-blooded drama to a romance drama. On the one hand, Kochiki Byakuya did not want to break the rules and refused to let Rukia escape. On the other hand, he was afraid that something would happen to her, so he kept an eye on the situation here. Rukia couldn't let go of her obsession, and she was worried about Shiba Kyan's death, and she had been living in guilt. So now she was a little self-destructive and had a weak desire to survive. As for Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro, they were inspired by Kurosaki Ichigo, so they tried their best to save Rukia. In his opinion, it was all very awkward. However, this taste was right. He can only say that this is the Soul Society. Over there, Kochiki Byakuya also realized that Shiba Ganju was from the Shiba family. He released Senbunzakura and said with a cold expression, I was not serious just now, and I was really rude. I must show due respect to the Shiba family. So, I can't let you live. Pink petals fell, accompanied by Rukia's screams. Shiba Ganju fell heavily to the ground with blood gushing out of his body. Ever since being defeated by Uehara Shiroa, Kochiki Byakuya has practiced harder. His Zanpakuto Senbunzakura was several times stronger than it was 20 years ago, and it was no problem for him to kill Shiba Ganju in seconds. But when he wanted to make the finishing blow, he was stopped by Yukite Jushiro, who came after hearing the news. The other party was very surprised. Captain Kochiki, you violated the ban on releasing Zanpakuto in the Senzakyu. You have been lying in bed for too long, and you are out of date. Captain Aizen was killed this morning, and the captain commander issued a first-level martial law order. Now is a period of total war, and we can release our Zanpakuto anywhere. Of course, forbidden areas like the underground Central 46 chambers were generally not up for discussion. The reason was that even the captains of the Gotei 13 like them had no right to set foot in that place unless they were summoned. What's more, the moment the special war order was issued a few days ago, the entire underground Central 46 chambers were in a state of prohibition. Now that place had many seals and early warning systems, even the captains of the Gotei 13 could not easily break in. Many sages and judges were sealed in it, thus getting the maximum protection. At the same time, they could continue to issue orders and command remotely. At this moment, several people suddenly felt an extremely strong spiritual pressure surging over them. This is a captain-level spiritual pressure, but it is very unfamiliar. Yukite Jushiro's face was full of shock. Kochiki Byakuya seemed to have thought of something, and remained silent with a cold expression. Feeling this familiar spiritual pressure, Kochiki Rukia had a complicated expression. Then, under the surprised gaze of several people, Kurosaki Ichigo descended from the sky with the help of the flying equipment provided by Shihoin Yaruchi. Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo's cool appearance, Uehara Shiroa couldn't help but think of a familiar background music in his mind. There should indeed be background music here. Unfortunately, the opponent did not have the "No One Can Beat Me When My Theme Song Plays" buff. Kurosaki Ichigo had not mastered Bankai now, and coupled with his serious injuries, his strength had been greatly reduced. So unless he powered up again, it was absolutely impossible to defeat Kochiki Byakuya. Although Kochiki Byakuya was not as aggressive and offensive as Zaraki Kenpachi, he was too well-rounded. As a hard-working genius, he had no shortcomings in all aspects of his Zanjutsu, Kido, Ho-Oh and Zanpakuto release. Among the captains, Kayaraka Shunsui was slacking off, Unohana retired, Yukitake was sick and bedridden, and Zaraki Kenpachi was addicted to slashing people. In addition, the Aizen trio acted low-key and did not show off. Therefore, the best captain among the others, Kochiki Byakuya, actually became the leader among the captains. Chapter 108, Advanced Teaching Methods, Powerful 5 Elements Barrier. The other party's fame and strength were indeed extraordinary. Of course, it was nothing to Uehara Shiroha. He kind of understood why Aizen was so against genius children. The other captains were all old-timers, some were slacking off, some were doing private work. They all seemed to be very busy, not seen all day, but no one knew what they were busy with. Only Hitsugaya Toshiro was conscientiously fulfilling his captain's duties, and like Detective Conan, he liked to get to the bottom of things. And unlike Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni, Suifon, and Kochiki Byakuya, Toshiro would not blindly stick to the orders of the Central 46. It seemed that the young captain was easy to control, but his existence might also lead to unexpected situations. Although his strength was not enough to become a variable, even if there was a 1 in a million possibility, Aizen would not take risks. So, Toshiro, who was conscientious and responsible, was unlucky. Sure enough, slacking off was the right way. And over there, Kurosaki Ichigo almost got into trouble. He had no clear understanding of Kochiki Byakuya's Zanpakuto Shurikai. In his current state, he might suffer a loss if caught off guard. Fortunately, Shihoin Yoruchi arrived in time, interrupted Kochiki Byakuya's Shurikai, and rescued Kurosaki Ichigo. The operation to rescue Rukia ended in a whimper. Rukia was locked up in the Senzakyu again. Shiba Ganju was sent to the 4th Division for detention, and also received effective treatment. He was tied up like a dumpling. Because of the deliberate cover-up of Yukitake Jushiro and Unohana Retsu, Yamada Hanataro, who returned to the division, did not receive any punishment. After watching the show, Uehara Shiroha shook his head and thought to himself, Ichigo looks exactly like Shiba Kaiyan. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the reincarnation of Kaiyan. However, the current Ichigo was too immature. It just so happened that his 5 elements barrier was already thirsty, so he would use this kid. After arriving at the captain's office, Yukitake Jushiro began to catch up on information. He combined reports from all parties and took a good look at the major and minor events that had occurred in the Soul Society recently. To be honest, he was shocked. He didn't expect Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada to be so crazy. Yukitake Jushiro felt very sorry. He always felt that his old classmate could be saved, but he didn't expect the other parties' ending to be like this. He never thought that the young commander of the T-gun would be able to gather the power of the Tsunoyoshiro family and take power. Yukitake Jushiro murmured to himself. Who would have thought that the young genius of that year would grow up to this level in a blink of an eye? However, the interests of the Tsunoyoshiro family are just a bait, in order to lock Uehara Shiroha in the noble district. Why did Central 46 do this? It is very unlike Central 46 to be unmoved by the huge interests. There was no doubt that there was a conspiracy. But no matter what, Yukitake Jushiro must rescue his subordinates. After thinking about it, he went to the captain's office of the 8th Division and found his old friend Kayaraka Shunsui. At this time, Kayaraka Shunsui was holding a wine jar and drinking wine happily. When he saw Yukitake Jushiro, he handed over a wine bowl and said, I heard that you caught a Ryoka but sent him to the 4th Division. Yukitake, you are still so kind. Back then, Yukitake Jushiro was the first to notice Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada's crime. But this old friend was too kind and wanted to give Tokunada a chance to reform and start a new life, so he did not expose him. However, Kayaraka Shunsui had seen through Tsunoyoshiro Tokunada. He knew that this bastard was hopeless and did not deserve sympathy. So after knowing his crime, Kayaraka Shunsui reported him without hesitation. Yukitake Jushiro refused the wine bowl handed over by Kayaraka Shunsui and said with a smile, Didn't you also send a Ryoka to the 4th division? This is not in line with your personality. You must have noticed something, right? Logically speaking, after Aizen was murdered, Kayarako couldn't be so gentle to the Ryoka who was a strong suspect. Even if he didn't execute him directly, he couldn't send him to the 4th division for treatment immediately. This was not the attitude to treat an invader. The two people with different personalities did the same thing to the Ryoka who disturbed the order of the Soul Society. In an instant, the two smiled at each other. I know what you want to do, and of course I'm on your side. Kayaraka Shunsui looked relaxed. His attitude towards Aizen Sasuke was different from that of others. He believed in Uehara Shiroha's judgment. So at the beginning, he listed Aizen and Tsunayoshiro Tokunada as suspects in this incident. Now the two guys who were suspected of being the masterminds were dead. It could only be said that it's like opening champagne. He even suspected that it might be Uehara Shiroha who finally couldn't stand it anymore and made a move in secret. Except for this person, no one in the entire Soul Society could do it so cleanly and beautifully. It would be impossible for those few Ryoka to assassinate Aizen silently. And those Ryoka who came to save people did not kill people, and they always acted with restraint. Aizen was not the kind of person who was hated, and the Ryoka had no reason to murder him. Therefore, Kayaraka Shunsui did not make things difficult for that Ryoka. I just feel a little sorry for the teacher. Yukite Jushiro smiled bitterly, but he had no intention of giving up. Kayaraka Shunsui said indifferently, the old man will understand. Even if he doesn't understand, the worst thing is that we will be punished like before. As he said this, he poured a little wine into the wine bowl and handed it back to his old friend. This time, Yukite Jushiro did not refuse, took the wine bowl and drank it all. At this time, Uehara Shiroha, who was enjoying watching the events unfold, slowly left the Tsunayoshiro family mansion. He looked back at this luxurious and huge mansion. It was time to close the Hueco Mundo T-gun base and recall those technical personnel. In this way, the technical data and various precious materials of the Tsunayoshiro family could be digested as quickly as possible. Moreover, he was not going to take the blame for Hueco Mundo and the Gotii 13. Hueco Mundo would be in trouble in the future, so it was better to evacuate the personnel as soon as possible. When the 1,000-year blood war was over, Hueco Mundo and the Soul Society would be under his control. While rushing to the secret base under Sokayaku Hill, Uehara Shiroha issued an evacuation order using the communication Jigakucho. Compared with the noisy Gotii 13 and other aristocratic forces, the T-gun was peaceful, as if it was an isolated island separated from the world. Under the protection of Uehara Shiroha, whether it was the Ryoka invasion storm set off by Kurosaki Ichigo or the conspiracy of others, it had no effect on the T-gun. Moreover, the T-gun had taken over the power of the Tsunayoshiro family. One of the four noble families who was once high above, now could only crawl at the feet of Commander Uehara. As a result, the morale of the T-gun soldiers was high, and everyone was willing to die for Uehara Shiroha. Once Uehara Shiroha's order was issued, the T-gun worked as one and operated quickly and efficiently. It was expected that the personnel and materials would be evacuated by tomorrow. Uehara Shiroha was very satisfied with this. As his subordinate, you must be obedient. But in addition to being obedient, your ability must also keep up. Only in this way could he be relieved and have plenty of time to slack off. However, as the plot progressed to this point, he had to move around. In order to better trigger special mission and exploit the child laborer Kurosaki Ichigo later, Uehara Shiroha decided to lay out a plan. At this moment, in the secret base of Sokayaku Hill, Shihoin Yoruchi had already explained the Zanpakuto S Bankai to Kurosaki Ichigo. Although your Zangetsu is a very rare permanent Shurikai type Zanpakuto, it is not enough. With Shurikai alone, you will never be able to defeat Kachiki Byakuya. Therefore, you must master Bankai. The method I offer is very dangerous, and you only have 3 days. Do you still want to continue? Come on. Kurosaki Ichigo was not afraid of any challenge and was full of fighting spirit. Just as Shihoin Yoruchi took out a white humanoid equipment, a clear voice came. The Tenshintai is indeed a good, but it is not enough. In the past, Urahara Kisuke felt that practicing Bankai was too boring. In order to escape the boring Bankai practice, he developed this Tenshintai that could quickly achieve Bankai. This was just like developing a time machine to catch sheep. The brain circuits of scientists were really incomprehensible. However, it is said that Bankai could be achieved quickly. However, the only person who really learned Bankai through the Tenshintai was Urahara Kisuke. Moreover, this process would place a great burden on the user's soul. Therefore, the use time could not exceed 3 days. Therefore, this Tenshintai was actually an experimental product. Why are you here? When she saw Uehara Shiroa, a hint of joy flashed in Shihoin Yoruchi's purple eyes, and her originally solemn expression became relaxed. At this moment, she was surrounded by enemies, which was equivalent to being an enemy of the entire Soul Society. In such a situation, she would of course be nervous. But after meeting Uehara Shiroa, her mood became relaxed, and she also put her heart at ease. Let me see your secret weapon. Uehara Shiroa looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, who didn't look like a 15-year-old, with great interest. Come to think of it, this is the first time we have officially met, Kurosaki Ichigo-kun. I am Uehara Shiroa, the commander of the T-gun. Mr. Uehara, hello, I'm Ichigo Kurosaki. The honest boy Ichigo Kurosaki greeted politely, and then looked at Shihoin Yoruchi with a puzzled look. He didn't know the relationship between the two, nor did he know what position the commander of the T-gun was, and who was stronger between them and the captain of the Shinigami. However, when it came to the surname Uehara, he seemed to have some impression. Shihoin Yoruchi said casually, "This guy is my boyfriend. What do you think, handsome, right?" After that, she took the arm of Uehara Shiroa generously, and then leaned on the other's shoulder in a bird-like posture. Uehara Shiroa also took the opportunity to hug the other's slender and soft waist. The two looked like a couple in love. Poor Ichigo Kurosaki suffered 10,000 points of critical hits. However, he thought of something and hurriedly said, "Mr. Uehara, are my friends okay?" "Don't worry, they are all fine." Uehara Shiroa shrugged. "But I will remain neutral and will not directly interfere in your war." I knew it was like this. Shihoin Yoruchi curled her lips, stood up straight and said helplessly, "This is the situation. So, we still have to rely on ourselves, you must complete the Bankai. This item is called the Tenshintai, and it is a treasure unique to the Onmitsukido. Using the Tenshintai, you can visualize your Zanpakuto, and after defeating it, you can complete your Bankai." This was of course a tricky way. After all, normally, even a Shinigami genius would need 10 years to initially complete his Bankai. However, this was not a normal situation. Not to mention 10 years, they didn't even have a month, and Rukia would be executed in a few days. But, Ichigo Kurosaki was not an ordinary person. Your Tenshintai is very advanced, but it is not safe, after all, it is an experiment. Uehara Shiroa didn't want to watch Ichigo Kurosaki and Zangetsu fighting for 3 days, it was too boring. The key was that he didn't get any benefit. He came here not to help others, but to find a qualified tool. His attitude towards these plot characters was very clear. He didn't mind helping if there were benefits. After all, some plot characters had good character and so on, and he appreciated them. But if there was no wool to be taken, that was respect the fate of others. Even if it was once the protagonist, it's no exception. How do you know so much about the Tenshintai? Shihoin Yoruchi asked in confusion, "Do you have a better way than the Tenshintai?" In fact, she was not sure if there was any problem with the Tenshintai. After all, this was a technology for the soul, and it was not mature. If Urahara Kisuke had not repeatedly assured that Ichigo Kurosaki was not an ordinary person and there was absolutely no problem, she would not dare to take out this thing. But even so, Shihoin Yoruchi had never heard of a better technology than the Tenshintai. Uehara Shiroa said confidently, "There must be. Your teaching method is too backward and too gentle. What if the child does not study well and cannot learn Bankai? He probably deserves a beating. When it comes to teaching, you have to look at a great teacher named Kaido." After saying that, without waiting for the two to react, he released his spiritual pressure and differentiated into 5 powerful forces that gathered around Ichigo Kurosaki. In an instant, he activated many trump cards such as the Unlimited Blade Works and the Mind Gem, and even used the 7 Flash Barrier that was promoted to the perfect level. The 5 Elements Barrier was something carefully developed by Uehara Shiroha, which could be said to be a collection of the essence of all his abilities. Ordinary people were not qualified to let him use such a trick. Only the protagonist had such treatment. Ichigo Kurosaki must be very moved. Boom boom boom. With 5 explosions, 5 energy beams shot up into the sky. The powerful spiritual pressure and impact shook the base. The entire Sokayaku Hill was trembling slightly. With such a big movement, if it weren't for the powerful defensive barrier and the cover of the Sekiseki stone, the base would have been exposed. Looking at the 5 energy beams in front of them, Shihoin Yoruchi and Kurosaki Ichigo were stunned and shocked. What kind of move is this? It's so cool. And so strong. The 5 beams of light surrounded Kurosaki Ichigo in a 5-part circular formation, forming a powerful barrier like the Sekiseki stone. Each of the energy beams had a unique structure and strange brilliance. Some were silvery and flowing, some were golden and sharp, some were blazing, burning everything, some were densely covered with vines, full of vitality, some had human faces, hiding mysteries. Chapter 109, You are still young, it won't hurt to get beaten more. The same thing was that all 5 beams of light contained terrifying spiritual pressure, even to the extent of distorting space and obscuring vision and perception. Under the impact of the powerful spiritual pressure, Ichigo Kurosaki was breathing rapidly and was a little out of breath. After a big battle with Saraki Kenpachi, his strength had been greatly improved, but he still couldn't withstand the impact of these 5 spiritual pressure light beams. Before, he also felt this familiar feeling of suffocation from Zaraki Kenpachi. But compared with these energy light beams, Zaraki Kenpachi's spiritual pressure didn't seem so scary. Who is this Mr. Uehara? And why was he surrounded? Mr. Uehara? What is going on? Looking at the 5 thick and terrifying spiritual light beams, Ichigo Kurosaki instinctively felt that something was wrong. This did not look like a lesson but more like an attack. He had not offended this person, right? Uehara Shiroha shook his head and said, Young people should not be short-sighted and only care about short-term benefits. Your age is the most malleable. How can you gain anything without taking risks and paying for it? Believe me, as long as you are willing to endure hardships, you will have endless hardships. If you want to be beaten, the world will definitely beat you up. You are simply avoiding my question. Ichigo Kurosaki was anxious. Besides, who wants to suffer and who wants to be beaten? As the light of the 5 energy beams became more agile and dazzling, the indescribable pressure became stronger. After a while, Ichigo Kurosaki felt the familiar feeling of weak hands and feet in cold sweat. He was so powerless when he first met Zaraki Kenpachi. Are you sure it's okay? Looking at the gorgeous barrier in front of him, Shihoin Yoruchi was also a little worried. This thing was more dangerous than the Tenshintai. Uehara Shiroha said confidently. I guarantee it. It is absolutely reliable. As long as you hold on for 3 days, you will definitely be able to complete Bankai. This efficiency cannot be compared with the Tenshintai. With Uehara Shiroha's guarantee, Kurosaki Ichigo and Shihoin Yoruchi both breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they could complete Bankai, it seemed that they could accept it. At this time, Uehara Shiroha changed the subject and said, However, the premise is that you have to survive. If you can't complete your Bankai, you will die at the hands of Kochiki Byakuya anyway. You either die or live, just like flipping a coin, it's either heads or tails. 50%, this probability is already very high, much better than the Tenshintai. I can't trust you at all. Don't treat my life like a coin. Ichigo was still very good at complaining. Even though the pressure was getting bigger and bigger, his mentality was still very optimistic. At this time, he suddenly realized and said, I remember. You are Rukia's teacher. She mentioned you many times, saying that you are very capable and have a high level of drawing skills, but you are too popular with girls. She also said that you have many beautiful girlfriends. Of course, the last sentence was inferred by him, and the original words were not like this. But it could also show what kind of person this person was. Don't talk nonsense. I am a gentleman, how can you slander my innocence out of thin air? Uehara Shiroa said righteously. By the way, I heard you have 2 lovely sisters. Don't worry, I will take good care of them after you die. I will never hand my sisters over to you even if I die. At this moment, Ichigo Kurosaki had a determined look on his face. His desire to survive had never been so strong as it was now. In the past, he wanted to defeat Kachiki Byakuya and get back at his former self. But now, he understood that the man in front of him was the final boss. He must not lose to this guy, and he must not let his lovely sisters fall into his claws. Sister complex is so disgusting. Uehara Shiroa's face changed, then I'll beat you to death. After saying that, he quickly chanted. To find dragons and divide gold, look at the mountains, one layer after another. No, that's not right. The sky and the earth are boundless, the 5 elements are illusory, and everything in the universe is but a bubble. Of course, he made up the words of the chant. Chanting spells like releasing Kido was really a waste of time. Was the 5 elements barrier so inconvenient? The reason why he recited the words was to add a sense of ritual. As Uehara Shiroa's mind moved, several lines of different colors quickly extended from the bottom of the 5 energy light pillars. These lines intertwined to form a series of energy grids. The originally neat and smooth rock ground also became colorful and dreamy. After the energy lines appeared, all space from the sky to the ground was included in the control of the barrier. The 5 elements barrier was officially activated. At this time, the spiritual pressure of the golden energy light pillar surged, and the light was bright, like a golden sun across the sky, and several golden lights instantly shot out and rushed into the black spiritual pressure. Feeling the abnormally restless spiritual pressure around him, Ichigo Kurosaki held his sword with both hands, concentrating and alert, and the uneasiness in his heart reached the limit. At this time, Zangetsu's reminder suddenly appeared in his mind, here it comes. Directly in front, be careful. Hearing the familiar voice, Ichigo Kurosaki made up his mind and swung his sword forward without hesitation, Getsuga Tensho. A huge crescent-shaped black slash blasted out, tearing everything in front of it into pieces. The power of the golden light and the Getsuga Tensho cancelled each other out and eventually dissipated. As expected, Laser Eyes and Getsuga Tensho are a perfect match. Uehara Shiroa nodded nonchalantly. Then, he waved his right hand, and a set of luxurious and comfortable tables and chairs appeared out of thin air. There were also various exquisite dishes and snacks such as tea and pastries on the table. The dishes were even still hot. He waved his hand again, and some more fine wine and fresh fruits were added. Looking at the table full of delicious food, Shihoin Yoruchi exclaimed, "Your ability is really too convenient, in all aspects." After that, she sat down consciously to serve Uehara Shiroa to eat and drink. Occasionally, Uehara Shiroa would also feed her, which was considered a give and take. The atmosphere between the two was very sweet and warm. Over there, after a sword shattered the golden light, Ichigo Kurosaki was delighted, thinking that it was nothing special. When he was thinking about showing off, he saw the loving scene between the two. His face turned black, and he almost shouted. Although I fight, I kill, and I risk my life for my friends, I am still a minor. I cannot drink, and I don't have a girlfriend. Is it really appropriate for you to show your affection in front of me like this? Can you respect me? I am fighting for my life here. Just thinking about it, Zangetsu reminded him again, be careful, it's coming again, behind you. Because he was a little distracted just now, he reacted a little slowly, so he didn't have time to swing his sword to fight back, so he could only dodge. He just dodged, and a stream of water flew past him. The attack power and speed of these beams of light are not very strong, I can handle it. Ichigo Kurosaki calmed down. Just as he was thinking this, Ichigo Kurosaki felt something strange on the ground. He immediately reacted and jumped up. As the green beams of light covered with vines became active, the ground cracked, and green vines entangled with Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo dodged it easily again, and then the fireball attacked. This time, he broke the flames with a slash. In an instant, the earth trembled, and Ichigo felt the ground soften and almost sank into it. Fortunately, he was now very focused and jumped onto a rock in time. At this time, the rock also became as soft as a cake. Ichigo breathed a sigh of relief, but a golden light flashed in front of him again. He could only dodge quickly. After a while of entanglement, Zangetsu reminded Ichigo, the 5 energy beams can each launch 5 different attacks. They are golden light, water flow, vines, flames, and swamps. The 5 attack methods cycle back and forth in order, never stopping. Therefore, you must find airstrikes to attack those beams, and you can't just passively dodge. I know, but I have no way. Kurosaki Ichigo was also anxious. However, he really didn't have time to destroy those light pillars. Although the attack of the 5 energy light pillars was very monotonous, traceable, and not very strong. But there was almost no interval, and he had no way to attack the light pillars against the golden light and water flow. At this time, in Kurosaki Ichigo's inner world, the white-clad Hollow Ichigo, or known as White, and the black-clad Zangetsu were analyzing the existing intelligence. After looking at it for a while, White said disdainfully, "Although he is the chosen one, he is still no match for him. He can't even handle such a simple attack. It's really hilarious. Old man Zangetsu, what do you think? If this barrier is only this strong, then there is really no need to worry." Zangetsu, with a sparse beard and a weathered face, looked a little solemn. "Although it seems so, I always feel that things are not that simple. I may have overlooked something. According to common sense, if you adapt to the attack method of this barrier, you should be able to break it. However, this barrier was set by Uehara Shiroha. The opponent could invade their world and even control their actions. A man like this should not be limited to this level. Or did the opponent underestimate the growth of Kurosaki Ichigo?" White nodded, with a dangerous light in his eyes. "If there is any change, then I can use Ichigo Kurosaki's body to teach that guy a lesson. I have kept the last incident in mind. He felt that the last time he was easily defeated by the opponent because he had no body to support him. This time, he would definitely get back at him." In the 5 elements barrier, Ichigo Kurosaki tried his best to dodge. Although he did not have the concept of the 5 elements in his mind, he became more and more proficient in dealing with the 5 elemental attacks. The golden light was difficult to avoid and was very sharp, so it was best to smash it with a slash. The water flow could be soft or hard, which was a little complicated and needed to be dealt with according to the situation. The vines were very flexible and difficult to cut, so they could only be avoided. The temperature of the fireball was very high, so you needed to be careful. The last swamp could not be taken lightly, and you must find a reliable foothold as quickly as possible. Ichigo Kurosaki felt that he was getting more and more at ease. He was getting closer and closer to the 5 beams of light. However, just as he approached the silver beam of light, the water flow was stimulated. This time, the speed of the water flow was a few points faster than before, like a high-pressure water gun. Caught off guard, he just barely dodged it. At the same time, he raised the Zangetsu and swung his sword to block it. After finally dodging the water flow, Ichigo Kurosaki breathed a sigh of relief and thought to himself, "The speed and force of the water flow seems to have increased. Is it my illusion, or am I too close to the pillar?" Just as he was about to raise his sword to chop at the pillar of light, the voice of Zangetsu rang in his mind. "Don't do anything, just avoid the vines behind you. Don't attack the light column. Remember, don't attack the light column." Without any doubt, Kurosaki Ichigo gave up the opportunity he had fought so hard for and chose to fly away. When he landed, he heard a creepy sound of growth and breaking through the air. Kurosaki Ichigo's body stiffened, and he slowly looked back. Sure enough, the vines that could only grow to his knees before, now not only became thicker, but also grew to the height of his waist. The range of the vines had become larger, and the aggressiveness had become visibly stronger. He said in a dry voice, "The attack will become stronger and stronger?" "Yes, and more than that, look at your sword." Zangetsu's usually calm voice also fluctuated. Kurosaki Ichigo looked down, and his pupils shrank. A small piece of silver water flow appeared on the back of his sword. The water flow had a metallic texture, like a small snake, winding and flowing. He remembered that this place had just touched the water flow. Zangetsu reminded him at the right time. These water flows should have an erosive effect. There is already an area of your Zanpakuto that is not under your control. It is really a terrifying ability. Moreover, I suspect that every attack has hidden abilities. Therefore, in the absence of clear intelligence, you must never approach those light pillars, and you must not be hit. Now he was also having a headache. The attack of this barrier was constantly increasing, and it seemed that there was no limit. These attacks were more threatening than they looked, so there was no way to act rashly for the time being. Now it seemed that they should have launched an assault on those light pillars from the beginning. At that time, the power of the barrier was not strong enough, and the abilities attached to the attack should not be so troublesome. Now it was a bit tricky. If you attack, you are restricted, and if you defend, you can only sit and wait for death. Such a barrier was also a very excellent existence in the three realms. I really don't know how Uehara Shiroha developed it. The opponent was so young. After hearing Zangetsu's analysis, Kurosaki Ichigo was frightened. Fortunately, he did not use Zangetsu to attack those light pillars. It turned out that these 5 attacks had their own characteristics and hidden mysteries. If you attack rashly, you may suffer a great loss. At this moment, the vines disappeared, and a fireball as big as a washbasin blasted out from the flame light pillar. Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly felt the scorching heat coming at him. His lips were a little chapped, his heartbeat was a little fast, and his mental and physical strength were consumed faster than before. He instantly burst out with spiritual pressure and dodged the fireball. At the same time, he concentrated on observing the changes in the patterns and light pillars. He tried to find out the deeper rules and the unique capabilities of each attack. In the inner world, White was already eager to try. He's done 4, so it's my turn. Let me break this damn barrier. And then I can get my revenge. I know you are anxious, but don't be impatient. Zangetsu shook his head helplessly. This time, not to mention you, even I will have to go on the field again. If possible, I really don't want him to go down this path. But now it seems impossible. We don't have a choice. In fact, with his strength, he could easily let Kurosaki Ichigo complete his Bankai. But in that case, it would not achieve the purpose of training at all. It was not necessarily a good thing to rashly gain powerful strength. The current Kurosaki Ichigo was not ready, both physically and mentally. And more importantly, Zangetsu did not want Kurosaki Ichigo to become a Shinigami. Kurosaki Ichigo was just a human being and had no reason to serve a Shinigami. This was not their war. What's more, in the future, it was possible to become an enemy of the real Yhwach. That was a dead end. It seemed to be a dead end in front of them. So, they had no choice. Even you are going to play? Is this barrier so powerful? White's face changed, very surprised. He knew how powerful Zangetsu was. He alone could suppress the power of the Shinigami and the power of the Hollow at the same time. Chapter 110, The 5 Elements Barrier in Full Force, The Gathering of the 3 Heroes in Prison. This strength was nothing short of terrifying. This barrier was just a dead object, but it was so strong that even Zangetsu had to take action. This was really interesting. You don't understand. This barrier is not that simple. Its power level is very high, even beyond the realm of the pinnacle of Shinigami. Without opening Bankai, Kurosaki Ichigo will never be able to escape. At this point, Zangetsu's mind flashed back to Uehara Shiroha's calm and composed face. He smiled bitterly and said, "I've been tricked. It seems that I can only delay time. When the time is right, I will let Kurosaki Ichigo complete his Bankai. Then, with my strength, I will break through the barrier in one fell swoop." This barrier was so powerful that it was impossible to break through it with just Bankai. Zangetsu must add his strength. This was no longer a power that a Shinigami or a Hollow could possess. Over there, Shihoin Yaruchi also noticed the movement of the barrier and asked in surprise, "Isn't this a simple barrier?" If it was the same level as at the beginning, she thought she could easily handle it. But now the barrier attack made her feel threatened. This growth potential was too terrifying. If it was just a simple barrier, it would never be so strong. Urahara Kisuke, Tsukabashi Tessai, and Hachijin were all top-notch Kido masters. In terms of barriers, the attainments of the three could not be said to be invincible in the world, but can only be said to be unique. However, even they could not arrange such a powerful and gorgeous barrier with just a clap of their hands. She even felt the breath of the Zero Squad from this barrier, which was really a bit unbelievable. This is just a small thing. Uehara Shiroa did not think this was so great. How could he feel surprised and powerful? The real horror of the 5 elements barrier had not yet been revealed. In fact, the barrier was not mature yet. But it had already transformed to the level of a transcendent. Therefore, Kurosaki Ichigo and Shihoin Yoruchi felt a fatal threat. The knowledgeable Shihoin Yoruchi figured out a little bit, but was not sure. Have you broken the limits of Shinigami? Not completely. However, he himself had not yet completely transformed into a transcendent. The 5 elements barrier was not only a killer move at the transcendent level, but also a key step for him to complete the transformation. Of course, with the help of the power of the Hogyoku, this process would be accelerated. So even if there was no special mission, Uehara Shiroa would get the Hogyoku. Shihoin Yoruchi was silent. She didn't expect that the transcendent power that Aizen had in mind, Uehara Shiroa had already obtained it in advance. The gap between the two was really getting bigger and bigger. Fortunately, she didn't make an enemy of him. At this time, Uehara Shiroa, who was full and satisfied, ignored Shihoin Yoruchi. He focused his attention on several Ryoka. The captain's move was extraordinary. Although Zaraki Kenpachi was defeated, Yukite Kenkairako still saved the captain's face and sent Yasutora Sato and Shiba Ganju to the 4th Division prison. The future 3 heroes in prison was only missing Ishida Yuryu. Uehara Shiroa had already used his observation haki to lock onto the positions of Ishida Yuryu and Inoue Oraheim. The two were wearing their Shinigami costumes, preparing to infiltrate the enemy and wait for an opportunity. But they were unlucky and ran into the drunken 11th Division 10th seat Aramaki Makizo. Because the two were not wearing their Zanpakuto, Aramaki Makizo saw through their flaws. Not to mention that during the wartime special order, Shinigami must carry their Zanpakutos. Even more, they actually claim to be from the 11th Division. Following the boss Zaraki, they don't even carry a sword. What kind of 11th Division Shinigami are they? Then, several 12th Division Shinigami, following Kuratsuchi Mayuri's orders, came forward to persuade them and rescued the two. But Ishida Yuryu could see that they had bad intentions. Then, Kuratsuchi Mayuri, who appeared with Nimyu, liked them. Several 12th Division Shinigami exploded. It turned out that just now, Kuratsuchi Mayuri secretly placed a bomb on his men and caught them by surprise. Seeing this scene, Uehara Shiroa couldn't help but complain. You are cosplaying as the queen. The others were in trouble, but no one was killed. You came up and killed a few of your own. You are really excellent. In fact, in the plot, in this Ryoka invasion, except for Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Aizen, the number of kills of other people was 0. Although Kuratsuchi Mayuri killed his own people and was suspected of padding his stats, you just say whether he killed them or not, right? Moreover, in the 1,000-year blood war, Kuratsuchi Mayuri was even more crazy. Sure enough, no matter which world it is, technology is the primary productive force, and scientists can be crazy. At this moment, Ishida Yuryu was a little panicked. Although his strength had greatly increased due to the increase in the concentration of Reisher, he easily defeated a Shinigami-seated officer before. But at this moment, they were facing the captain of the Gotei 13. And he was a scumbag with no bottom line and unscrupulous means. In the following battle, Uehara Shiroa was even more powerless to complain. In the original work, Kuratsuchi Mayuri released the first Bankai. This was also the first appearance of the Shinigami Bankai, which attracted everyone's attention and was dazzling. Then it successfully lowered the gold content of the Shinigami Bankai. Kuratsuchi Mayuri's Bankai, Kanjiki Ashisoji Jaizo. was beaten into a sieve by Ishida Yurio's, let's still. Of course, there was a coincidence factor in this. Let's still, itself was not weak, it was equivalent to an alternative perfect holy form, and was positioned at the same level as the Shinigami Bankai. Moreover, this move happened to restrain Kuratsuchi Mayuri's Bankai. But no matter what, if you lose, you are a loser. Uehara Shiroa could only sigh that these scientists were really like Batman, never winning a skirmish, and never losing a fight. He also took a few glances at the subsequent developments, which were similar to those in the plot. First, Tozen had to take down the battle-damaged Ishida Yuryu and send him to the 4th Division cell. The 3 heroes in prison had all gathered. As for Inoue Oraheim, she was brought to the 11th Division by Aramaki Makizo, and successfully attracted the attention of Zaraki Kenpachi. However, Zaraki Kenpachi was the same as Ishida Yuryu and Ishida Ryukin. Although on the surface they were all interested in the women of the Shiba family, in fact, they really cared about the men of the Shiba family. Thinking of this, Uehara Shiroa glanced at Kurosaki Ichigo, who was still fighting hard in the 5 elements barrier, and his eyes lit up. Yes, the men of the Shiba family were really hard-working. In the barrier, Kurosaki Ichigo really fought for his life. Compared to when he just entered the barrier, he had really become a lot smarter. Before, he was standing still and outputting, and didn't consider dodging, unloading, or receiving and launching. He highlighted a strong force that could make bricks fly, and he was definitely not timid. His moves were all natural, without any skills. But now, after each attack, he immediately dodged and would never land in the same place twice. While defending, he would try his best to counterattack. He didn't want to do this, but the attack rhythm of the 5 elements barrier was too fast and the offensive was too fierce. Therefore, Ichigo Kurosaki could only make good use of every bit of strength and every bit of time. He couldn't have any hesitation or any mistakes, otherwise he would be beaten or even killed. As the battle continued, his combat power, skills, and experience improved rapidly. Uehara Shiroa was happy to see this happen. The stronger the opponent became, the greater the value of use, and the more benefits he got. This was a win-win situation. Ichigo Kurosaki was beaten twice and he won twice. However, Shihoin Yoruchi's eyes were very sharp. She keenly noticed that something was wrong. Ichigo Kurosaki was still rejoicing about his progress, but Shihoin Yoruchi realized that the opponent was about to reach his limit. However, the power of the barrier did not decrease, but became extremely terrifying. She said with some concern, "Is the strength of the barrier too high? What if he can't hold on? If he can't hold on, then he'll die. What else can we do?" Uehara Shiroa said indifferently. "Anyway, he will die sooner or later if he fails to complete his Bankai. There is no difference between dying in my hands and dying in the hands of others." Although Shihoin Yoruchi was born in an assassination unit, she was sometimes a bit soft-hearted. In fact, this could be considered an advantage. After all, she was not a brainless saint, and she was also very decisive when it came to taking action. In this regard, Uehara Shiroa did not blame her too much. After all, you can't ask everyone to be as good as him. Even if his woman had some minor shortcomings, he could tolerate it and afford it. In fact, Shihoin Yoruchi's worries were not unreasonable. With the passage of time, the power of the 5 elements of the 5 elements barrier was becoming stronger and stronger. Kurosaki Ichigo had long lost his previous calm and self-confidence. His current condition was very bad, and the Shihakusho that was condensed with spiritual power was damaged in many places. Not to mention counterattack, he even had difficulty dodging. Because of the great pressure, he did not notice that the mysterious mask that he had thrown away long ago appeared again and blocked the attack for him. Just when White and Zangetsu could not help but want to play for him, Uehara Shiroa came over and snapped his fingers and said, "All right, take a break and eat something." Instantly, the 5 elements barrier stopped moving, and the light of the 5 energy beams dimmed. Ichigo Kurosaki, who had escaped the disaster, gasped for breath. He felt like he was alive again. He really saved his life. He secretly sighed in his heart, "I survived, I thought I couldn't make it." But on the surface, the boy acted very calm. Ichigo has been strong all his life and will never reveal his inner weakness. What a man! Seeing the other party's strong and calm appearance with his hands in his pockets, Uehara Shiroa teased. Can you do it? You are so young, why are you so weak? If you are not good at it, practice more. You will never be able to complete your Bankai if you continue like this, so eat more. Shihoin Yoruchi thought it through. Uehara Shiroa was right. It is better to suffer and be beaten now than to lose your life in the future. Some suffering must be endured. She looked at Uehara Shiroha and thought secretly. I have been a little slack these years. Byakuya Kuchiki has become so much stronger. If it weren't for this man training me day and night, I might not be able to save Ichigo Kurosaki this time. It seems that I have to practice more seriously in the future. Although she still had a few tricks up her sleeve, she didn't like to use them. Because she hadn't fully mastered that technique, once she used it, she would completely lose herself. Uehara Shiroa liked to tease her in that state. Thinking of this, Shihoin Yoruchi's golden cat eyes became a little brighter. Eat? Ichigo Kurosaki felt a little hungry. Previously, he had not felt hungry even after fighting hard for a long time. However, after fighting with the strange barrier for a while, he actually felt hungry. Especially when he saw the full of delicious food on the table in front of him, his stomach started to growl. It seemed that the consumption just now was greater than he thought. Don't look at it, that's not for you, this is for you. Uehara Shiroa waved his hand and placed 2 plates of pitch-black food in front of Kurosaki Ichigo. Seeing these 2 plates of what looked like dark cuisine, Kurosaki Ichigo was startled and said in horror. What is this? Are you sure this is food? It's too suspicious. No normal person would eat this thing. Not to mention the color, aroma, and taste, it's not much better than charcoal. Is this really something that people can eat? He would never eat this thing even if he was beaten to death. What? Are you afraid that I will poison you to death? Uehara Shiroa smiled and took a bite. Although the food in Hueco Mundo looks almost the same as charcoal, it is not a good thing at first glance. But it tastes really good. Anyway, he ate it with relish. It has a very unique taste, and it is very pure, without any impurities. This may be related to the environment of Hueco Mundo. After all, that place is nothing but sand, which is indeed very pure. Seeing Uehara Shiroa eating very happily, Kurosaki Ichigo was a little hesitant. It didn't look like a prank. Moreover, seeing others eating so happily, he was even hungrier. You can choose not to eat, but as Yoruchi said, you will not be able to hold on later. Uehara Shiroa spread his hands. Although this thing doesn't look very good, it is very good for you. You will know after you eat it. The choice is yours. Feeling the growing hunger, Kurosaki Ichigo knew that he had no choice. If he continued like this, let alone completing his Bankai, he wouldn't even have the strength to fight. So, with a bitter face, he put a ball of black food in his mouth. He had planned to chew it a few times and swallow it directly, just as if he was taking medicine. As a result, as soon as the food entered his mouth, a special taste filled his mouth. The sweet and delicate feeling made him feel extremely satisfied. All of a sudden, his empty abdomen seemed to be nourished, and his body became warm and strong. He seemed to be alive, as if he had been reborn, as if he had opened the door to a new world. An inexplicable force in his body began to become more active. Kurosaki Ichigo opened his eyes wide, with a look of enjoyment on his face, and blurted out 2 words, "It tastes so good." After saying that, he began to concentrate on eating, not noticing that his wounds were slowly healing. The damaged mask that he had thrown away and reappeared was also gradually restored to its original state. At the same time, in the inner world, White seemed to smell something and asked in confusion. This is the taste of home. What on earth is this Uehara Shiroha doing? Is he really on our side? Zangetsu looked at the direction of Uehara Shiroha with a serious expression and said firmly. No matter what he is planning, it doesn't matter. We must stay away from him, away from the Shinigami, away from fighting. Only in this way can Kurosaki Ichigo survive. Old man Zangetsu, your idea is good, but it is a little unrealistic. White sneered and said. After all, we have no right to decide anything, only that kid can make the decision. Those people will try their best to drag him into the vortex. You can suppress his power, but you can't control his thoughts. After all, he is the king of this world. At this moment, White was in full swing, full of fighting spirit. This Zangetsu was good in everything, but a little too calm. In this world, calmness and reason cannot solve problems, only strength can solve problems. And now, he was power. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. For the part 10 of the series What If Karmic Gacha System in Modern Family World, there are 2 versions. One is just the text-to-speech, regular, version, and the other is with the songs, alternative, version. Now I need to know which version should I use going forwards. As such, just like for everything else, I would like your opinion on whether I should continue with regular version or the alternative version. I have created a poll for this, so please vote in it and let me know which version we should use going forward. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.